Takes us on to item 6, the revenue budget for 24-25 as at the 31st of December last year. Elizabeth, are you taking this one? No?
It's me today.
Oh, sorry, never saw you there.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides the board with a forecasted financial position for the year to the 31st of March as at December. The report shows a forecasted underspend of 235,000 for the year, which is a favourable movement of 31,000 since last reported. Within Table A of the report, you can see the detailed underspends, with the majority continuing to be the trend of employee costs, and that's due to the challenges in recruiting and filling of vacancies. There are also variances within supplies and services that amount to an underspend of 18,000, and that includes fluctuations in expenses for the new premises as actual costs have been known throughout the year compared to budget. Additional funding for costs relating to new burdens will be carried forward to 25-26, and that will be offset against the costs anticipated in that year. Table B provides details of the 31,000 favourable movement since the last reported. For 24-25, the pay settlement was not agreed at the time the budget was set, and an amount equivalent to 3% was included in the budget. The pay award was settled and paid in October, and the additional cost of 17,000 is reflected in this outturn report. In terms of reserves, these remain at 241,000, with no additional expected drawdown for 24-25. Happy to take any questions on the paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Any comments or questions from members? Do you see any hands up? Agree the report? Yeah, okay, that's fine, thank you. Takes us on to item 7, the final annual accounts for 23-24. Lindsay, you again?
Yes, thank you. So I'm very pleased to finally present the audited annual accounts for the board's approval today for 23-24. The board has a statutory obligation to prepare the statement of accounts and have these audited by an external auditor. The audited accounts must then be approved by the board by the 30th September. So the board considered the draft accounts at its meeting on the 30th of June, and during the audit period there have been 4 adjustments to the accounts since the draft was presented at this meeting, which are detailed in section 2.5 of the report. As a result of these changes, expenditure increased by 38,000 and net usable reserves reduced to 241,000. The audit was mostly completed by the end of September in line with the statutory deadline. However, as a result of a delay out with the control of officers and the audit of the Falkirk Pension Fund, the external auditors could not confirm the pensions information included within the accounts. This, along with changes in the external audit team, including a change of partner, resulted in the external auditors having to carry out additional work and the extended period of the audit. So when considering to approve the final audited accounts, the board are asked to take consideration of the auditor's report, which is the next item on the agenda, and we have the external auditors on the call to present and answer questions on that. So I'm happy to take any questions on this report in terms of the audited annual accounts. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Maybe a question just to kick things off from myself that's directed to our auditors. Can you maybe just explain why these accounts have been delayed for 6 months?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. I'm Ian Howse. I'm the partner from Adeleke responsible now for the audit. The previous partner, Pat Kenny, retired in September. I came in to pick up Pat's work. There were a couple of things that I required to be done that Pat hadn't covered off. Those were now being done and we managed to conclude the audit, but it's mainly due to a change of partner and us obtaining the information necessary on the pension fund disclosures, which is not within our control. So whilst we'd requested that information, it hadn't come back. We need that in order to conclude on the pension fund liabilities as recorded in the accounts. So a combination of factors as set out by Lindsay, which I think was a fair summary of the process, but unfortunately it has taken until now to get to that point where we're comfortable to sign.
Okay, thanks for the explanation, Ian. Is there any questions or comments from members? Danny?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just a wee suggestion for correction. On page 28 of our papers, or page 3 of the report, It's just got a couple of my colleagues' names incorrect. I think Elaine, who's on the call, I think if her description's correct, it's Watterson rather than Stone. And other councillor for Stirling, there's Paul Henke, Henke. It's his surname, it's Henke, just for a couple of corrections on the Stirling list there.
Thanks for that, Danny.
Elaine will tell me if I've got it right or wrong there, Elaine.
Agreed, Danny. I had noticed it. I was a bit, you beat me to it.
Danny, I'll get Brian to take a note of that and it'll be amended.
Obliged, thank you.
Okay. Can we agree the accounts? Sorry.
Sorry, Alan, Convener. I've just one quick, probably daft laddie question on page 61 of the report, 86 of the papers. I was just wondering if there's an explanation for the large variance between 2023 report, 23-24 figures for the actuarial gains arising on changes in financial assumptions. I was wondering what those financial assumptions were. It was like 9.5 million dropping to 764,000. I'm just wondering why was that large variance? If you can, there's an explanation for that.
Lindsay, can you pick that up?
I can give you a brief answer on that, because the pensions information is calculated by our actuaries, so they take into a number of assumptions when they're looking at calculation the pension fund. So in terms of, they look at the asset return and they look at the discount factor, and those are two of the things that really influence what the pension fund valuation is at that point, and that can move significantly, as we know and we see in the economic forecasts of our own bank interest rates, etc. So that the actuaries work on those number of assumptions and build that in. So as we know, the pension fund is a kind of notional amount, so it's not realised unless we cease trading and we have to make the payments. So it's a notional valuation based on those assumptions at that point, and can fluctuate up and down. And we have seen a move from a net liability over the past couple of years to a net asset, which is mainly due to those assumption changes.
Thanks, Lindsay. I don't know if Ian, do you have anything you'd like to add from an auditor's point of view to that?
Oh, it was a textbook answer, I think, from Lindsay. I mean, yeah, essentially there's a lot of variables that go into it, including mortality rates. Post-COVID, they've assumed we're all going to live a little bit less longer, which means the liability comes down. The markets have improved, so you get a better return on your assets. Interest rates have changed. All of those factors play into effect. But I would say that the movement is consistent with what we're seeing in all pension fund liabilities, i.e. they've all improved significantly at this point in time. But again, it's a long-term set of assumptions to give you an estimate of what the liability or asset might be at the end of a long period of time. And it can fluctuate hugely and just really, it's a funny number in many ways that goes into the accounts. But what's really important is the amount you're actually having to pay per person, the cash, because that has nothing to do with this in a way. That's to do with the triennial valuation and what they think the funding deficit is. And yet the accounts never really show you that amount. And yet for my money, that's the really important bit, because that's the bit that fits into your budget. So everything is consistent with what I see elsewhere. Lindsay's quite right. It's due to multiple factors the actuaries will have taken account of. But I think really the important number is probably not that number anyway, if I were to say that.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Donald, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine. I should have actually remembered that. I haven't served in the pension board in the snapshot in time of the different valuations, so I apologise.
I don't see any other indications for people to speak, so can we agree the accounts? That'll allow us to get them signed off. Yep, thank you.
Agreed.
That takes us on to item 8, the annual report to those charged with governance.
That's me, Chair. Thank you. So this is our report that brings together the work that we've done on the audit. As noted, it took longer than it should have done, and we obviously need to improve on that in the year ahead. It's a very clean report. There are no material errors or uncorrected misstatements of a material nature that we need to bring to your attention. The appendix does note a couple of uncorrected misstatements which are not material. In theory, I ask you to consider adjusting those, but most people would say they're not material. It doesn't change the view of the accounts, so we're not changing them because of the administrative burden of doing so. So we will be issuing an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion on the accounts. What I will point out is that the indicators of sort of quality indicators, I can't remember the last time I saw a set that were all green. I've been doing this for a long time and we rarely get that positive about everything. So I think that's a good reflection of exactly how the accounts have been put together and the minimal level of errors that we found. We were working to a materiality of £62,000, which sounds like not a lot, but in the scheme of your accounts, that's the level we work to. And you will see from the uncorrected misstatements, they're all well below that level, so no concern to me. We identified 2 significant risks, one of which a management override is in every audit, so we always assume that. The specific one to you was then cut off and completeness of non-payroll expenditure. In both cases, we were happy with the controls in place and the consistency of the judgments with our expectation. Again, that's quite often not the case, so it's very good to see a strong control position from that perspective. We do note at the bottom of page 9 of our report that we say from our testing to date, I can confirm that testing is now complete and there were no instances of management override. We were happy with the cut-off and completeness of non-payroll expenditure. There were 2 instances of incorrect treatment within the balance sheet, so it's just classification errors, not changes to the numbers, but actually where they're shown in the statements. So very minor corrections that were done there between prepayments and accruals, which is really a technical accounting definition of exactly where they should be. On the pension scheme, we just noted a misstatement relating to Goodwin, which is, again, quite common. It's a legal case around equalisation of rights. The amounts involved would be very small in that case. A few control findings, but they really flow from the things like the accrual and prepayment. Nothing significant that I bring to your attention there. On terms of the wider scope, we're happy with obviously where you are from a financial standing perspective at the moment, but you recognise the challenges going forward, and you know are keeping on top of that with your plans for savings, etc. So nothing particularly to bring to your attention there. Overall, a very clean report, very happy to sign the accounts. And like I say, very rare for us to be that positive in terms of the quality indicators and the work that has been done. Happy to take any questions. There is a small additional fee there because of some complications around the pension fund and dilapidations, which I would point out to you. And that's it really from me. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for your report there, Ian, and it's very good to know that the markers are all green. That's something that we'll strive to try and keep, obviously, for the future. Open up to questions from members or any comments. Do we see any hands up? Donald, you okay?
Just maybe a broader explanation and additional costs it has to incur in relation to the pensions, and just a bit more detail on what that was.
Ian, can you maybe just highlight what the additional costs actually relate to for us?
Yeah, some additional work that we needed our pension specialists to look at, because when you get a pension asset, it's a rare, certainly in my career, it's been a very rare situation of a pension asset, and there are complex rules around whether you can recognise that asset or not. And we had to take some technical and detailed advice on that. And again, dilapidations require us to use some valuation specialists where we're looking at complex dilapidation provisions. So it was just really the complexity of 2 items, but the pension asset was the main issue because it's a very complex calculation of whether you can recognise the total asset or not.
Thanks, Ian. Lindsay, is there anything you would maybe like to add to this?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the additional fees, and I've expressed to Ian that I was surprised about the level of the additional fees, as they account to around 50% of the overall fee for the valuation board. So in terms of the pensions asset, I don't think it's anything different, as we previously heard in this meeting as well, that other bodies are experiencing assets in their pensions. So it's one that I would like to continue the dialogue with Ian on to see if we can revisit that fee at all, and hopefully not incur additional fees going forward through the audits.
Lindsay, do we know how this fee is actually structured then?
And there is information being provided by the external auditors on the breakdown of the cost of that, yes.
Thanks for that. Don, are you okay with that? Do you want to ask something?
The quick follow-up question on the pension is was the variance favourable to the board in terms of the pension assets? And secondly, what are the prospects, given the delay of this report, of us getting some form of discount on that fee?
So the pension asset doesn't really help the board at all. As I said, it's a number that just fluctuates up and down. What would is if there were a change in your contribution rate, but this is not directly related to that. Although, as pension funds, if they remain in surplus position, then that should allow you to bring down the contribution rates in future triennial valuations, because obviously the fund is looking much healthier than it was when you were increasing your inputs. But I can't claim that anything that we've done is of direct benefit to you other than just needing to be done to prove that the accounts are correctly stated. We've done the work that we needed to do, which is why we've incurred the fee. So I wouldn't expect a discount in relation to the delays.
Thanks for that, Ian. Don, be okay with that?
I just wish Lindsay all the best in the further negotiation on that particular question.
I'm sure Lindsay will report back to you in due course. Okay, I don't see any other hands up at the moment wanting to speak or comment on this, so can we agree the item? Yep, okay, thanks for that. Takes us on to item 9, proposed revenue budget for 25-26. Lindsay?
Yes, could you bear with me 1 second as I move from one paper to the next? So this paper presents a proposed revenue budget for the board for the financial year 25-26. The report details the proposed budget for consideration and makes recommendations on the required requisitions from the constituent authorities, Falkirk, Stirling and Carmarthenshire councils. The forthcoming financial year again continues to present challenging financial position for both the board and its constituent authorities. And on that basis, when preparing the budget, as in previous years, any pressures are looked to be mitigated through reductions in expenditure. The movement in expenditure budget is set out in Table 1 of the report, and after netting off these pressures and reduced expenditure is increasing by 192,000. And that includes the baselining of the uplift of the 24-25 pay award and an estimated 3% uplift for 25-26. Adjustments have been made to budgets to reflect more accurate estimates of costs relating to the new premises previously estimated. And budgets have also increased to reflect estimated costs of computer hardware and software maintenance, including inflationary uplifts for contracts. The budget includes an estimate cost of 48,000 for the uplift of national insurance contributions, which was announced by the UK government to take effect from the 1st of April 2025. The previous year's funding for new burdens has been carried forward and will be used against related spend in 25-26. This funding is now baselined into the core grant for local authorities and is not identified separately. In setting the budget, uncommitted reserves of 5% are held, which is within the previously approved level of between 3 and 6%. We felt it prudent to keep reserves at this level to accommodate any additional pressures, particularly in relation to the pay settlement, as there is a risk that the pay awards may be agreed at a higher level than the 3% assumed, and any additional cost above this level would look to be funded from the reserves in 25-26, where possible. So 168,000 of reserves have been earmarked for specific purposes, and these are detailed in section 6.2 of the report. In terms of the requisition, as I said, we've tried to keep the increase in requisitions low as in previous years, but we've had to increase those requisitions by 3%, and that's set out in Table 5. And that equates to a monetary increase of 83,000 across the 3 constituent authorities. So section 5 of the report also looks ahead to the next 5 years and sets out the assumptions in calculating the indicative budget gap across these years, which increases from 277,000 in 26-27 to 622,000 by 29-30. The table shows the increase in requisitions required by constituent authorities in each of these years, which to meet this gap, which is higher in 26-27 due to the use of reserves to support the 25-26 budget, but then reduces to around a 3% increase for future years, which is relatively in line with inflation expectations. Any updates on these assumptions will come forward to the future board meetings and be confirmed through the annual budget setting. Happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Just a quick question from myself. Just going back to item 5, our agenda for the divisional assessor. Once the individual's appointed, what impact will that have on our underspend?
I'll ask if colleagues want to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the budget for that post is included within the 25-26 budget. So on the expectation that that post won't be filled until 25-26 due to the timelines for recruitment, it wouldn't have an impact on 24-25 projected outturn. So the cost would expect to just be contained against budget for 25-26.
Okay, that's fine. I'm happy with the answer there. Any questions or comments from members? Don't see any indications. Donald, you okay? Good. Can we agree to the report? Yep, that's fine. That takes us on to item 10, interim valuation performance report. Mark, are you dealing with this one?
It's Anne.
Anne, sorry.
Good. This report aims to inform the board of how the assessor's workload is progressing, and the information I'm referring to was intended to be presented to the November board meeting, which has been postponed to today. So it covers the period 1st of April 2024 to 30th of September 2024. The full year performance as at 31st of March 2025 will be reported to the June board meeting. Section 2 outlines our performance in valuation work and reports on how quickly we make changes to both the valuation role and the council tax list. This is important for ratepayers and council taxpayers who are keen to avoid backdated bills and consequently the local authorities with cash flow management. At the midway point, we were slightly behind on our targets for changes to the valuation role and valuation list, achieving 65% against a target of 70%, excluding self-catering changes for the valuation role, and 92% against a target of 94% for the council tax. The self-catering audit requiring each taxpayer to provide evidence of 70 days of letting continues to challenge the valuation staff and impact statistics. Resources have been directed to the remaining 2017 appeals at the first tier tribunal and proposals disposal, as they are focused on the statute disposal date of 31st of December 2024. This has been characterised by hearings announced with limited notice, which has impacted our proposal planning and scheduling. These conflicts and challenges have meant valuation staff resources have been stretched and directed away from council tax and valuation law updates. The valuation teams have continued to experience recruitment challenges during this period, having 2 vacancies at technician level. There has also been a three staff on off on maternity leave. To counter this, we have taken steps to recruit training, a training valuer and technician to cover maternity leave, and we've been successful in doing this. Training again, as a result, features heavily in the valuation teams, ensuring temporary staff and training valuers have the required skills and knowledge. I recommend that the valuation joint board note the performance.
Thanks, Anne. Any questions or comments for Anne in this report? Again, I don't see any hands up.
Just a quick question, Anne. I realise there's a slight dip in targets, but that's understandable because of the vacancies. Has the trainee started or?
Yes, they've started now. Yes, we've got the 3 on board now.
And what's your thinking in that approach moving forward in terms of if you can't recruit for the other vacant post, and then obviously the question about the 3 maternity posts whether they're coming back, but the trainee option, is that not one to look at again for the future in terms of the other vacant posts, or do you think it's too risky to fill?
Yeah, we have had to adapt these posts slightly, just to make sure that we can get what we need from these temporary members of staff and adapt what we're doing, to tailor the work that they can do, because our work tends to be quite take quite a bit of time to get skilled at, and so that does pose a problem with temporary staff. But I think we decided it was much more beneficial to take them rather than leave the vacancy. So
No, I fully support the trainee approach, and I realise that as mentoring issues, I was just really trying to test the area that if you've got continuing vacancies there, whether taking another step and recruiting another trainee would be the way to go in that particular area.
yeah, I mean that's a valid point, and that's something we can consider. We've got an existing structure as it is in the budget for the existing structure, so we're working within that.
Yeah.
But we're constantly looking at that because of the staff changes.
If I could just come in, that is a valid point, you know. Provost, what we're trying to achieve is a delicate balance between qualified staff and trainees. And the thing is about trainees is that there's a 4-year spell of trainees. So we've got some trainees that contribute a lot more than others. We've got a couple of trainees that are going through they're just about there for our ICS qualification. One will be sitting at APC final review this year and another potentially next year. So those trainees, albeit the trainees, they're contributing much more than a first year trainee would. So albeit we've got a good few trainees, and it does take some mentoring. Some trainees are better than others. So as long as we don't have a tranche of first year trainees, we don't have a problem. We can manage with the training process, and that's the situation we've got at the moment.
That's laudable. You've got a pipeline, if you like, of that. I think that's how it should be. That with the recruitment specialism. So I was just trying to just see if there's other opportunities to enhance that pipeline. But I understand the delicate balance between, as I say, the resources it takes to mentor trainees is there. So yeah, thanks for that.
Can we agree with the report, folks? Yep, thank you. Takes us on to item 11, the valuation appeals progress report.
Thank you. And this report informs the board of how we're progressing with their appeal and proposals disposal. Disposals of the 2023 proposals have been progressing in terms of valuation proposals procedure, Scotland Regulations 22. And section 2.3 shows the statistics there. The deadline for disposal is 30th September 2025 in terms of the valuation role and valuation notice Scotland Order 2022. And further progress has been achieved to date and will be reported to the board at the June meeting. A feature of this period, again, has been the sort of issues we've had with first year tribunal with sporadic hearings, not really having, we're used to having a planned schedule of hearings well in advance. The first year tribunal finding their feet have not been able to give us that. So we've had a lot of appeals hearings coming in at short notice, which has challenged us with our 2023 disposal. Section 3 and 4 outlines appeal progress for the 2017 revaluation and running roll appeals. These appeals have now all been dealt with, however, they remain 36 of the upper tribunal. Section 5 covers the remaining 2010 appeals, and I now can report that there are no outstanding 2005 appeals. Section 6 reports on council tax proposals and appeals, and I'm happy to take any questions on.
It's good to hear that the road appeals have been cleared. That's good progress there. Any comments or questions from members at this point in this report? Again, no hands showing. Donald?
And a wee bit off piece, but then there's a whole lot of talk again looking at council tax and a timescale for revaluation as well. I was just wondering if you've got any thoughts on that and if there's anything formally being put in place for that, those sort of discussions.
There most certainly has been discussions at the national level with the Scottish Assessors Association, because the government have asked us to do some budget predictions for a council tax revaluation, but it's all very much at the early stages. And I think there's a hearing taking place today, in fact, that the Scottish Assessors Association executive are represented at. It's a Scottish Government hearing regarding council tax review. So yes, it is pretty much back on the political agenda at the moment. Yeah.
There's no formal structure it's set up yet.
None at all. No, not. It's all very at the said.
And just very quickly, a favourite topic, OI. Is that the OI class? Is that all? Is that in?
It is, and I'm happy to report that following negotiations with one of the principal valuers, the 2017 appeals have all been agreed, as have the previous appeals. So we're now at the stage where the agent is still in discussions with the appeals that have been forwarded to the Lands Tribunal. So we anticipate all of those appeals being settled without recourse to the Lands Tribunal hearing. So we're well down the way of settling those appeals.
That includes the two police outstanding ones as well, I think.
The two police ones are kind of out with our control, because the agent that originally represented the police federation for these appeals going way back are no longer the agents, and in fact the police federation took the appeals themselves, and it's an administrative thing that the appeals have been lodged by the agent, and it's the agent's appeals as such. So we're just waiting on the tribunal to sort it out between themselves. It's not a question of value, because the values are tiny in comparison.
It's a bit of an odd one, given it's a sort of public sector and it's a kind of planning sort of partnership that's happening.
Well, it is, and it's not just the appeals for Central Scotland. It's they've got a couple of appeals dotted across the country, and they're still outstanding. So it's just an administrative thing. It's not an argument about the actual value.
Okay, so
Yeah, as I say, that report is based on the internal, so we went at that point. So that's the easy following there.
See, just in relation to the council tax and revaluation that we're talking about, and I hear what you're saying about it being quite a distance into the future before it's going to come into effect, because it's all just kicked off. Would there be additional funding for that? Because it's going to be a major piece of work.
Absolutely, we wouldn't be able to do a revaluation without additional funding. That's the whole crux of the matter. I think there was a report done over a year ago where the Scottish Government asked the Assessors Association to provide an overall figure, and it was in the tens of millions across the country. Yeah. So I think that's one of the actual stumbling blocks, is that yes, we would absolutely not be able to do it with the current resources, and we would need additional funding. And that half of the problem is that even if we get the finance, the actual money, do we have the actual staff, and we need to recruit more staff, as with every authority across the country. Where do we get staff? So not just a case of money.
So are these the sort of situations where you bring in agencies to try and cover certain areas of work, or how would you actually cover that?
I think to be honest, all options are on the table. Yeah.
You're looking at some system developments as well that might make valuations a bit more suitable to market.
Yeah,
that could be something we can take further as well.
Yeah, our software system does analysis for non-domestic valuation. It doesn't do it for council tax, because it wasn't in existence when council tax began in 1993. But that we are looking at using our software, our own in-house software, and our developers to look at mass appraisal for council tax, which would, that would be a massive resource implication that it would help us do the job of valuation if the software did all of it for
It's
us.
maybe a case for artificial intelligence information.
Well, exactly, yeah.
It contains all your prejudices that could be built.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't see any other hands up. Is there any other comments or questions on this report? No. Agree the report? Yeah. That's fine. That takes us on to the last item on the agenda this morning, item 12, hybrid working review report.
So, yes, you may recall the board, we introduced and approved a new hybrid working policy in November 2023, and at that point it was decided to have an annual review, and the annual review was due in November last year, and this report refers to the annual review. The report hopefully is self-explanatory, but just generally speaking, at 2 we had staff feedback. We did another staff survey, and as you can see, it resulted in better levels of satisfaction with regards to the hybrid working arrangements. As far as performance is concerned, we've continued to monitor our performance through the usual ways, key performance indicators. What we definitely have done is increase our number of meetings with regards to our 2 days in the office. The valuation teams, admin teams and IT teams all meet regularly just to ensure performance doesn't drop off. And as I say, as far as office relocation is concerned, before the hybrid working model has actually facilitated the move to this new premises, and that we've been able to rationalise our floor area by about 50%. So I think, as I say, the report's fairly self-explanatory, and I would like to report that it continues to work successfully, both in terms of staff wellbeing and work-life balance and our organisational output. And I would ask the board to note and comment on the review.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the report. Any comments or questions from members? No? Yeah.
Just sort of very quickly, one of the measures would have been, and there's the number of complaints, if they've gone up, and you've indicated that you can get 5 complaints, that was hardly any complaints, so that's a very positive in terms of the joint working. But I think this, just the experience that we're having as a business, as a board, is reflected across the country, and this is going to create a massive churn, I think, in relation to property values and things like that as well. So I think it's one to continually watch in terms of the business that we're in, the board. And I just think looking forward, the big thing to me is going to be this whole question about whether there's valuation and other tax measures. I'm sure property will always be part of that menu of opportunity in terms of tax. There will always be a role for sort of valuation. It's just how we take that forward, given the challenges you outlined earlier in terms of staffing, recruitment, budget. So yeah, thanks for the report.
Thank you.
No questions from members? No, we agree the report? Yeah, thanks very much. That concludes our business this morning, everybody. Just like to thank you all for your attendance. We'll see you at the next board meeting. Okay.
It's convenient.